We're going to spend the rest of our hour talking with our guests this evening, and we have three wonderful guests who are really all connected by their interest in fantasy fiction, I guess you was the genre. Is that the proper name of the genre? We have Jim C. Hines with us, and his books are very popular in this genre, but I'm not sure I know the proper name.
You can call it fantasy, you can call it science fiction fantasy, you can call it speculative fiction.
Speculative?
We're not that picky.
Ah!
You just want to sell books.
Right. As long as you're buying and reading the stuff, you call it whatever you want.
When I go to the bookstore and I see the little signs hanging when they have them in the genres, it's a little bit more disciplined maybe than when you go online and you don't know exactly what genre you're reading in anymore.
Well, and sometimes Amazon will put books into weird places. I've got an urban fantasy that at one point was the #1 seller in Sword and Sorcery. Okay, I guess technically there's a sword at one point, but no.
Ah. And you didn't pick the categories?
Nope.
Oh, because see, I've done some electronic books and they ask you to pick the categories. And trust me, you will spend hours trying to say to yourself, I don't know, am I this, am I that, should I belong there? How do you people figure that out, Bill? Not well?
Whoa, that's a tough question. You kind of get it, if you wrote the book, you kind of know what you wrote.
You would think
but
so.
a publisher tries to massage it sometimes, so it'll sell better.
Because there are categories where I was told if you're really trying to sort of game Amazon,
Yep.
right, you have to figure out which one you stand a better chance of being higher in because that'll help with sales. Is that right?
That can be the case, but overall, in the long run, I don't know if that's good for you. If you want to build a career writing, it's a...
Why'd you pick a spider if you don't like them? Because you knew it would get...
for goblins.
Yeah, well, I guess. Yeah.
It seemed like a challenge.
Yeah.
But he ended up developing this personality and becoming really the most popular character I've ever done.
Is that right?
He jumped into the Libriomancer books that I'm working on right now, whole separate series, but no, Fire Spider is still there. He has shown up in a couple of short stories. I go to conventions and people will come up to me and hand me like little crocheted smudges or a smudge necklace that they made. One woman at a recent event made me a smudge hat.
Oh, wow.
Just 8 legs hanging down, little felt flames coming off the top. It
was a dread.
it was. It's kind of bizarre, but it's wonderful.
Now, when you speak about a character like that, I mean, you seem to give him a life of his own. I mean, it's not that you created him, it's that he showed up. Is that how that works? How much ownership or authorship or, I don't know, is he your progeny or is...
I wouldn't call him my progeny. My wife would ask so many questions. I've talked to writers who approach it from the mindset that I just listen to my characters and write down what they say.
Yeah.
And if that works for them, great. It doesn't work for me.
Okay.
Smudge came from my head somewhere, for all the good and bad that goes with that. There will be times when I'm writing and I get stuck and it feels like the character is saying, no, I'm not going in there. But I don't think of that so much as the character talking to me. It's more somewhere in my subconscious realizing I'm trying to force the plot. I'm trying to force the story to go this way when it's out of character and I'm being lazy and I need to step back and figure this out.
So there's some sort of aesthetic you know about the story and you know what works and what doesn't. Because I think about actors who inhabit their characters to the point where you don't want to be around them if they're an axe murderer because, they might decide that you needed to be off. So, I mean, I didn't know how much you got into the characters like that.
I have not gone around setting things on fire.
Good.
When I was writing about the goblins, I did not eat anybody. I try to limit my, draw that boundary.
The one thing that I'm confused about nowadays, because they have invented a genre while I wasn't looking, and it's called young adult fiction. It's, the Katniss Everdeen there, all of those series and the rest of it. That's a genre that didn't exist maybe 30 years ago, to the best of my knowledge. So it came out of somewhere. Where's the overlap, or is there overlap? How does that genre differ?
I would say young adult has always been there. It may not have been labeled and marketed that way, but for example, Heinlein wrote a lot of books that were aimed more toward juveniles.
Oh, really? Robert Heinlein?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I never saw him.
They might not have been in a young adult section, but you could go in and say, hey, I want to pick up some Heinleins for my kids. Not the one with all the naked people and where they're sleeping with their own grandmother. I want the juvenile stuff.
I see.
And they would know what that is. But
So that was the main distinction, was that it wasn't quite as sexy or maybe it was quite as violent, or?
It's a distinction.
A distinction. Okay.
But I think in part when you got things like Harry Potter and Hunger Games, and then all of the other writers jumped on that and said, oh, this is where the money is. We'll write those books.
I see.
It kind of spawned a category.
We've got 2 young aspiring authors and a graphic artist with us, but what do you read?
I read Artemis Fowl, one of the greatest books that I think when I was,
You're listening to
12
David
or
C.
13.
Thomas?
Yeah, when I was 12 or 13, that was one of my favorite books. I did read Harry Potter. I got into, what's that book called? It was like Charlie Bone or something like that. Read a couple of different books like that.
They inspired you?
I would say Artemis Fowl did, yeah.
Uh-huh.
I loved Artemis as a character. It was really, really nice. And everything worked as far as like the fairies and everything like that and how the goblins and everything. It just was a really, really, really nice book that I really fell in love with.
Now you're in the process of thinking about bringing out your first book as a self-published electronic book. Tell us a little bit about where that came from and what you're hoping to achieve with that book.
Oh, I actually started off as like several different things because I started writing it about 10 years ago, I want to say. When I actually just finished reading the 3rd Artemis Fowl book, and I was like, I could really write a book, I guess. And I went into it, and I still have like the actual copy of it, and it was, after reading it, I read it, like 2 days ago, and I was just like, what in the world was I writing? It was like treasure hunters, but it turned out to be something completely different, and now today it's something that's veered off completely. So I'm definitely keeping it for nostalgic reasons.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what stage are you with the new book? When is it going to be ready to...
Well, I'm thinking about probably doing an October release. I was taking Bill's advice when he told me about that, and I've been gearing towards that, thinking about doing a Kickstarter sometime, I want to say either in August or September, leading up to it. Right now I'm just in like the final edits. It's like the scariest thing that I've ever done, like combing through and making sure it's perfect.
Continuity, grammar, proofreading, little things errors that creep in, all the things that, yes, that... And you know what, after a while you get to the point where it's very hard to see your own problems. You know, I had to print out a chapter of a book recently and literally lay it on the floor because I was afraid that I'd repeated something, and I couldn't just by searching tell where, you know, one of those. I mean, it does get complicated after a while.
It does.
Get lost in your own writing.
I try to, like, as I go along, remember everything, but after, like, again, 10 years, and it's just like, all right, do I put this in? Is it there? Do I have it later on or anything like that? And I like to think that I have it moving in a good way, but sometimes you do get like little bits of actual me in there that shouldn't be in there, and you get that issue, and it's just like, I got to get that out. So it's a lot of things that I didn't factor into getting my first book out there, and it's scary. It's very much scary.
Now, how did you plot it? Did you actually write out and organize a plot line and then work from that plot line, or
yeah.
You did?
Well, when I was in school, like, I found I couldn't work at home. I just couldn't. It was just chaotic. So when I was at school, when I should have been paying attention, which I did. I mean, I was there, and I completed the work before everybody else. I would actually do outlines. So I would do like chapter 1, stupid name, A, and then subtitle or whatever, and then just ... B ... And I found that actually works for me, and so I like that way. And that's kind of the thing that fits the whole style of the book, and I can just fill in the meat and potatoes and everything else. I just got to get the dinner plate there.
Fiction is a mystery to me. You know, I write in the nonfiction area and journalism all the time, but I mean, I've seen people who do things on index cards so they can keep switching elements around. I see Jim nodding his head. What's your system?
I'm closer to David. I don't do the index cards. I write an outline. I start writing the book from the outline. I swear a lot and go write a new outline. But books are big. I mean, that whole plot talking about trying to hold everything in your mind.
Exactly.
I can't hold yesterday in my mind.
Yes.
So the outline is almost like a crutch for the brain.
Yes, it is.
helps me hold that whole picture, even if it's a bad picture, even if it's a broken picture. I can at least refer back and oh, right, this is what I'm trying to write about. This is where I'm going.
You almost have to do it because, like, I just got done watching Jurassic World.
Did you see
night.
that?
Yes, this is the 7th time I saw it.
He's
Probably-
like
Yes.
broadcasting.
Probably did a little bit of an, I probably did a little bit of an overkill or anything like that. But I find that if I actually write it down on an outline, it's there, it's solid, because everyday influence can totally change it. So that's what I did.
Give us your short review of Jurassic World.
Oh my gosh, it is like.
Apparently you like it.
Oh
Either
my
that or you're really
gosh.
torturing yourself.
Oh no, it is amazing. It's like one of my top 5 movies probably.
Ah.
It just really brought in the nostalgia of like the Jurassic Park one, but then completely went in a different course, but still paid homage to it, and you can accept that, and then they can move on with it. It's beautiful. Seriously great. It's gorgeous.
Well, that certainly adds a lot of visuals. We have to bring in Jynell Veverka. Many people will know her from, she was here just a couple of weeks ago with the Wildflower Eco Farm.
I was there as a farmer, and I'm here as an artist.
Yes, because you do the paintings
I
that
do.
bring these people to life, and you're working on some of the logos and cover art for
Absolutely.
David's book.
Yes.
And so how did you get started doing that? And what's
Oh gosh, I've been a fan of fantasy since I was born. Ever since I was about 4 years old, my mother made me watch The Labyrinth. And The Dark Crystal. And The Never-Ending Story. And I grew up on those movies and those stories and was just totally wowed by it. And all these beautiful characters and these cute little monsters and these places. So I just wanted to see more. So as the movies would come in, the books would come in, I just wanted to do more with that. So I would just start to say, well, what if a character looked like this? And I would kind of draw that. Or say, now what if this movie took a turn? And I would kind of write a little fan fiction of what if.
Oh.
So as I grew older, maybe my teenage years, I began to come up with my own characters or my own storylines. So I just kind of stuck with that. But the thing is, when I would start writing my own stories, I would do an opposite as these gentlemen would do. I would draw the character first. I'd give them a personality. I'd say,
So you could see them.
yeah. So I would draw like a place, like a beautiful tree with some purple flowers, and say this tree would look good in this setting, and this is going to appear maybe so far down my storyline. Not just yet, but this is a place that's going to exist.
Ah.
So here's my characters, here's what they look like, here's their personalities. I haven't figured out what they're going to be doing in the plot line. I just have them figured out.
You know who they are.
Right. So eventually when I do write them down in my story, I already know their attitudes. I already know their attire. I'm just ready. I just know what to expect from them. So it just makes it a lot easier to just kind of deal with them and put them along with a little storyline.
Now, do we ever see fantasy fiction done as graphic novel?
Oh, absolutely.
So that seems you would be the
Oh,
person to do that. Yeah.
Oh,
That's what I
gosh.
just thought when you were describing it.
Bill and I were often thinking that,
Yeah, laying out a graphic novel.
I've seen so many versions of graphic. I grew up with Sonic the Hedgehog and Archie.
Oh.
I loved Archie. I loved him.
I've played more than my share of Sonic.
Oh gosh. Yeah, Marvel. And then I started to watch anime.
Yeah.
And then I saw the manga came out.
Yeah.
And I was a big fan of the manga, and especially Sailor Moon is my big
Yes,
number one
yeah.
anime. I'm a
Yeah.
total freak about that. And then just kind of seeing these more adult-like graphic models. I think it's Metropolis. I always get tongue-tied. And that's kind of a more adult, serious type of fantasy graphic novel. Or The Sandman, written by Neil Gaiman, was another genre. So it's just so many different types of all these graphic novels, and I'll just look at them, I'm just like wowed. And just knowing that maybe I can have my own little...
I think there's something there, the world is sort of divided into visual people and word people, and I think that it's, this genre requires a little bit of both, I
Everyone
think.
has their own style out there.
Yeah, but you sort of come at it from that more visual side, it seems,
Right.
and that's how you find your way into plot.
Empty white room, and he's doing a thing. Okay, next chapter. That's what the revision process is for.
To fill in some of those blanks, perhaps,
Yeah.
as to what happens in that room, or...
Fill in some of the details.
Now, when you get your book cover that the publisher invents for you, as I'm assuming how it happens, do you say, yes, wow, boy, that's exactly what I was thinking of, or do you go, oh my God, that's not the person?
Depends on the cover. Gotta be careful here. The publishers I've worked with have been very good to work with.
They give you some say-so?
They didn't for the first few books.
Okay.
My primary publisher is Daw in New York. The first few books, it was just sort of, an email would show up and it's like, hey, here's what your goblin looks like. Okay.
Yeah.
And it wasn't how I had visualized it, but it did look really cool. It was, it was a good painting. It captured the feel of the book, and people bought it, so obviously it worked. So yeah, I was happy with that. For later series, I think in part as my editor figured out that I wasn't going to be a complete diva about it and make her life completely difficult. She would start to ask me for a little more input, a little more feedback. But it's still, I can give suggestions. I can say, hey, this is what I was thinking about. But what shows up in my inbox, I don't always know what to expect.
It's a challenge. I'm working with a local author who writes poetry, and she had asked whether she could use one of my paintings, and of course I thought the wrong painting. So I picked the wrong one, but we finally figured out which one she was talking about. But it's, as Bill will tell you, it's an art. And matching those and making it work. And also in this online era, a cover online can look different than a cover in a bookstore and all those other considerations that you have.
I tell this story because people are often shocked. Deb Dyson, who's a local, very successful children's book author with a series called Pout Pout Fish, she did not meet, and that's a graphically driven medium.
Yes, children's.
It's a children's picture book.
Yeah.
She did not meet or have a conversation, whether it was by phone or email, with the graphic artist who did her first book until a year and a half later.
Isn't that
To me,
hard?
I mean, that you don't, and somebody just recently asked me, should we pick the, they've got an idea for a children's book, and they said, should we pick the artist to do it? And I go, forget that idea, unless you're the artist. I mean, it's not going to happen.
The publisher picks that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They've got people, a lot of them have people like a stable of very reliable people they know and use them, or they know enough about the industry that this is the kind of technique they want, but you don't get to pick your artist generally unless you're very, very successful.
And you don't necessarily want to. The fact that, David might be brilliant with words. David is brilliant with words. Let's just go with that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That does not mean he is a brilliant graphic artist.
Right.
Or that he's going to have the best ideas for this compared to the artist and the publisher or a marketing team or whoever it is you're working with on that cover.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust myself to even begin to know what the book will look like as far as the cover.
And every time I've tried to do a cover on my own, it's ended badly.
Maybe I should just give up now. And we'll just go and talk to the publisher and say, here's a few things. If you want to use them, fine. If you don't.
Yeah, here are my words. Just try to make them
Make
look
a
nice.
picture.
Make them look nice.
Now, do either of you read Jim Hines?
I do.
Yes.
All right, you get a
Janelle
plus.
went over the moon. Janelle went over the moon when I told her the name.
Oh,
What do you like about it?
I'm going to come sit with you.
Cozy up, you guys, because I
Yeah, we
need
gotta
you in
cozy
the
up. We
shot a
gotta
little
go.
closer
Yeah.
anyhow. Yes.
so I was at a garage sale over by the Allen Street Market, and I saw two of your books, and they were in the free box.
Oh.
And it was the Mermaid's Madness and the Stepsister Scheme. And all I saw were warrior women.
Ah, yes.
And I said, mine.
And that was cover art. That was Scott Fisher capturing, and it wasn't what I would have imagined, but it was, hey, I will portray this sort of kick-ass trio of women, and people will know what to pick up.
I picked it up.
Thank
I
you.
read the back, and I said, all right, I love fairy tale twist. I am in.
Because what I like about your art is that you have very strong women in your art.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, from what we've learned, that's not always the common in the genre, so that's, it's good that you two know each other now, because that's a trend, eh?
A little bit.
Little bit? You started kind of the trend?
I did not.
I think you did quite a bit to make this happen.
I'm not going to claim I started anything. I may have signal boosted and tried to point more attention to the fact that women don't bend that way. But it's been an ongoing conversation.
And I also like that his female characters are rather non-traditional, sort of say, as well. And that definitely sucked me in.
Yeah?
And it kind of gave me my own little ideas for my own drawings and maybe my own storylines to follow along with.
Oh, cool.
Absolutely.
Do we know, women are the majority of the book readers.
Mhm.
Are they the majority of the readers in this genre? Or don't we know?
Which genre? Because the young adult, my mom's like all over like this Hunger Game craze and the Twilight stuff. And,
yeah.
geez.
But I'm thinking of the fantasy and science fiction genre. I think of science fiction as being a male-dominated readership, but I don't know about fantasy. Do we have any? Do you have any stats?
You gotta have me stumped on that. I don't know. I think traditionally it's a male genre that is
Really?
expanding very quickly. Just
I think
as
it depends on which piece you're looking
Yeah.
at.
When you look at your books, what do you think? Do you think that your audience has changed as you've gone into more strong characters, more women characters?
The only thing I could tell you for sure is after I switched from the Goblin books over to the Princesses books, I did have a handful of male readers who emailed me and said, dude, loved the Goblin, but I can't follow you here. I will catch you when you get to your next series.
Oh, interesting.
Which
Huh.
is kind of sad, but their loss.
Jim, I just wanted to ask you, because one of the things you're noted for is your social media skills. Won a Hugo for that, basically for being a fan blaster kind of.
Fan writer, yeah.
But one of the things that I noticed recently on your website is how many other writers in your genre would have a link to rape resources, and tell us why. I mean, I think it's impressive. It tells me something about what you're doing.
I had that on my website originally back in like the very late 90s when I first started doing the website thing. I had been a crisis and rape counselor here in East Lansing over at the Listening Ear. It was something I have always been very passionate about. It's something that's had a personal impact on some of the people in my life. It's important to me. And then for a while, I got it into my head that no, I have to be professional author guy, and I pulled that down and I just focused the website on book stuff and tried to make it more professional, whatever that means. And then a few years after that, realized I was being a complete idiot. I have this platform now that for whatever reason, people come to this website, people check it out, they come here maybe looking for the books, maybe because of something I've blogged about, whatever. Those resources are important. Not everybody knows about them. Not everybody understands what rape is or how it works or the difference between the myths and the things you see on TV versus the reality.
Yeah.
And I realized if I put this on here, if I go back to blogging about something that I care about, this could make a difference to somebody. And so I kicked myself really hard for ever taking it down, put it back up there, and have kept it there ever since. Just as, hey, this is important, and as long as I've got this platform, I'm going to put it out there and try and help some people.
Well, it basically just came into play in a big way, didn't it? Because of some of the controversy about how rapes are portrayed in some of the fantasy and science fiction. Would you kind of like to elaborate on that?
That's treacherous territory, isn't it?
It is,
Yeah.
very treacherous.
Okay, with the disclaimer that my interactions with George R.R. Martin have been positive.
Okay.
I've only really met him once or twice, but he seems like a very pleasant man. Fantasy, in particular, is not good at writing about rape. There are exceptions. But we tend to be very lazy about it, and we buy into all of those rape myths, and it tends to be written from a very uninformed point of view. One example that comes to mind is it was the complete stereotype stranger in the bushes with a knife, dark complexion, leaping out of the shadows. And it's not that never happens, but that is not the majority of rapes. Most of the time it's a friend, it's a loved one, it's someone you know. And yet that's not most of what we see. There's also the question of, does this need to be there? Does this advance the story? Why are you choosing to include it? Well, I'm choosing to include it because I need you to know that this bad guy is really bad. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's the only way you could come up with? The same way that 1,000 other writers have done before you? Come on, we do this more than we have them kick puppies. Go with puppy kicking for once. It's still cliché, but it's not quite as... Well, another thing that comes up is, well, we have this female character. What's going to happen to... Well, obviously she has to get raped.
Something bad has to happen to her.
And that's the only bad thing that,
Right.
that we can think of to do to this character.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, Shannon McGuire, who writes much more prolifically than I do, has actually got an email asking about her urban fantasy heroine and saying, when is she going to be raped? Not if.
Not if.
But this is a strong female character. Obviously, this is something that must happen.
Yeah.
Both because we get lazy and we don't know what else to do to the characters. And I think there's also a level of, well, we'll let you have your strong protagonist, but we don't want her to be too strong. So we need to knock her down a peg.
Yes. This will bring out her vulnerable side.
Right. And it'll make guys feel better.
Oh. Wow.
And I mean, Shannon, to her credit, said something that I can't repeat on the air, but no, this is not happening. I'm not going to do this. Don't email me anymore because you're a creep.
Yeah.
But there's... It's an
That's
overused,
disturbing, actually.
It really is. And it's just an overused trope. And it doesn't tend to be used thoughtfully or with really an understanding of what you're writing about.
I have to break in and say that it is LCC Radio WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. We're talking with Jim C. Hines about the issue. I actually work with a woman. I was the coordinator of the Victims in the Media program for many years. And Heather Boyer, who was a very outspoken advocate in the community, one of the things that she talks about is she said, I was almost the cliche. It was the person who crept up the stairs and who, he was a stranger, somebody that I didn't know, all of these things. And she said, I almost feel guilty sometimes when I'm giving a lecture saying, that's not really, it happened to me, but that's not the way the majority of rapes happen. And the challenge is that the rates of PTSD are actually higher among women when it's somebody they know than when it is a stranger. Because in some ways you can divorce yourself from it and say, well, that happened just randomly, I was picked for no good reason. But when it's somebody you know and you feel that extra sense of betrayal, it can be even more difficult to deal with. So one of the challenges, too, for journalists, and I want to make this clear, is that one of the things we always say at workshops, I'm so glad that you have those rape resources on your website. I get so mad when I read an article that includes something on sexual assault and it doesn't give a hotline number, it doesn't give a website, it doesn't give any place for somebody to get help. Because what we know is people who have been suffering through that circumstance will read those articles, and that's the time where maybe they will pick up the phone and call somebody like the listening here.
And the one other thing I wanted to add about fantasy and portrayal of rape, a lot of the time when you talk to people who are writing the grittier, grimdark type fantasy, you'll get into, I'm being historically accurate.
Yeah.
It's like,
I've seen that argument with the Game of Thrones.
First of all, where is the history, where is the historical documentation you're working from, or are you just making assumptions because you read it on the internet? Secondly, how exactly is this historically accurate in your epic with zombies and dragons and wizards?
Ah, yes.
Oh, yeah, those.
Where is your concern about historical accuracy here? No, this is a choice. Yeah. And these same people who are so fixated on historical accuracy and rape will create this cast of characters that's entirely white,
Right.
even though that is not historically accurate pretty much anywhere you go.
Right.
It's a very selective kind of accuracy, in air quotes.
I tried the first episode of Game of Thrones, and quite honestly, it was so violent I couldn't make it through the whole episode. Is that, and I don't know, because that has somewhat put me off of the genre in recent years, because it does seem to be so over the top with violence. Is that a subsection of the genre? What's going on? What's with that level of violence?
I think there is a trend toward the gritty, violent in some areas, but that's definitely not the only thing out there.
Okay.
Some of us are still writing nose-picking injuries and fart jokes.
David, do you have gruesome ways you dispatch people? I don't even care if they're dispatched gruesomely, as long as you don't dwell lovingly over each little entrail that comes out.
You're asking him
Part of
about
it.
the book, right?
Yes, I hope.
Not really. I like to have my fight scenes be longer, a little bit more in depth. When I read books, I don't find too much depth in the actual fight sequences or anything like that, so I'm left to imagine it myself. So when I do that, I go into detail. But as far as like the death themselves, I think after having a longer fight period, you know how that's gonna end or how it happens. So I don't make it gory or anything like that. That's
Okay.
not what I'm usually about either. So yeah.
Like the obligatory car chase in the movie that, okay, well then the guys won't walk out. We can get through the car chase, and I just kind of tap my finger. Okay, they'll chase around the cars for a while, and then we'll go to that. Well, as a woman, how do you react to some of those?
Well, I actually have a scene in one of my stories that is kind of the opposite.
Oh.
And it is, the heroine is kind of blunders in the battle, where she's been taking these battle trainings and these archery skills, and she says, I'm going to go into this battle, I'm going to do just fine. And she wasn't just fine. She ended up finding out that maybe she just wasn't up for this battle, and it was kind of, there was blood. She did get hurt badly. There is a quote-unquote blood transfusion that had to happen in order to save her. So I wanted to kind of sort of keep it realistic, where you have these really strong women that just realize, maybe I'm just not cut out to this. Maybe I need a little more training before I carry on and try this thing again.
Would you ever have one of your female characters sexually assaulted?
There was a point where she had a near encounter, actually. And then she successfully fought off the guy.
Aha! What happens when women start writing the fiction is that...
Yeah, I know. I was like, maybe I'll have it happen. No.
Oh, okay.
So I did back out the last minute. So, but I kind of wanted to put in just a little touch of real situations that you would actually find in the real world, just to keep it from having your heads going further and further in the clouds, and then suddenly this dramatic action takes place, and oh, whoa, that could happen to me. Oh my.
So a conflicted heroine who discovers that she may not be quite as immortal and unassailable as she thinks. Nuance. Women are good at nuance. Yeah. Okay. So I think maybe we'll think about, as more and more women move in the field, have women been successful in that field? I don't remember very many women's names on the top of the bestseller lists in that genre. Are they...
J.K. Rowling?
Well, I guess that's right. I'd say.
What's her name? Stephanie Meyer?
But that's why she called herself J.K., isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Suzanne Collins with the Hunger Games.
Oh, that's right.
There are very successful women writing in the genre. there are also still some barriers. If you break down the numbers on who's likely to get reviewed, David and I still have the edge there,
I see.
just by virtue of identifying as men.
Is there something
But-
special about using the C, by the way?
Oh, right.
It's sort of the secret handshake.
It is a secret.
The middle C, yes.
But no, there are a number of women who are writing very good, wonderful books and doing so successfully. Anne Leckie won both the Nebula and the Hugo Award last year for her book Ancillary Justice, and it was a wonderful science fiction, space opera, adventure type book that has been very well received.
Now, do the vampire books fall into that same genre, or are they more in the horror category? Is there somewhat of a
Interesting. I don't write my vampires in a horror, so.
I'd say science fiction. It wasn't really horror, more of science fiction romance.
You can get the urban fantasy, the paranormal romance,
Yeah.
some of the flat out horror. But
It's very mushy. That's all I know.
very mushy? Okay, all right.
Very mushy.
darn vampires are everywhere.
So no zombies though. Where do zombies make it in?
I wrote zombies.
You got zombies.
Yeah.
Aha.
I think I did it in a very grounded, because like you, I want to keep realism in there. Anything that has like realistic, like what our society deems as real or whatever, I like to push that into my book while bringing in the fantasy, so it's like a believable fiction story. And I do zombies in there, and the way I think I do it properly, I spent about a month and a half just learning about zombies and how to incorporate it into the book. And it was really, really difficult to do so, but I think I did it very well.
Now yours is a saga that you already have other books in your head that you know will be flowing from this. It seems that many books in this series are not just a one-off, they're really it's sort of like the first chapter in a longer story.
Yeah, this one is 6 books that I call the Sabres Saga. I've written the first 2, but after having fine-combed or fine-toothed the first one, unfortunately the second one is useless, so I spent 5 months on the second one writing it and everything, and I looked at it the other day and I was like, oh my god, everything I wrote had to just be completely dismantled.
So you're gonna have to start all over?
Yeah, I gotta start all over. I mean, it's going in the same direction, but the things that happened in the first book that I changed completely changes like the characters' personalities, the characters' like direction. So I have to revamp everything.
Who's your protagonist and where did he come from?
I call him Daniel Ziggins, and he is one of a triplet pair, and his story is very much different. It pretty much takes place in Egypt for like the first chapter or so, and then he snaps into like his present day. And I guess as far as like the character development, I don't know where he came from. I have no idea who he is. I just know like one day I was like, this is his name, this is what he is, go with it, and that's kind of where it flowed. But all my other characters are from people that I actually know. Because I always wanted to know, I was like, how do I create characters that are believable for everyone? I was like, well, I know a bunch of characters myself. I can just take that and embody them and put them in a book. That way I have experiences with that person in real life and I can put them in there. The only person that I have not met as far as like a real life person was Daniel. I don't know where he came from.
Interesting.
He's the one I write the most of.
How would a graphic artist listen to that author talk and then interpret it?
Yeah.
How do you do that? Because that's part of the mind I don't have. It left me long ago.
I feel like I'm in a different mind frame here because I hear you describe your characters and I can actually see them in my head.
See?
See, but I can't
I
do
just
that.
it's
Yeah.
just right there. There's this
Oof,
image
that is scary.
projected.
That is scary.
In the back of my mind, I said, you know what? There's what this person may look like, and here's a little smirk they have that you just mentioned. There you go.
Ah. See, that's the... I work with Carl Good, and he was the information graphics director for Newsweek. And he just thinks differently. I mean, if you're at a meeting with him and he doesn't have paper, he'll grab somebody's pen or lipstick and he'll start painting on his fingernails. I mean, that's how bad it is. He has to keep showing you what it is he's doing. That's the way in which he communicates. And it's very interesting to watch, you know, two creative young people coming at it from a different side there. So, wow, that's really kind of interesting.
I'm definitely not a literary genius, but I can just take what Daniel's telling me and I can just draw it right in a picture and just project it that way. And
I'm jealous of that. I would love to know what some of my characters.
I think it took us about a day or two just to get one little picture just perfect. And I said, "Do you like this?" He said, "No." I said, "Do you like this?" He said, "No." So I just redid it. He said, "No." I said, "Do you like this?" He said, "Yes, I like the color. Now do this." I said, "All right, we have one down."
Uh-huh.
So finally we have this perfect design that we're both happy with.
Oh, great, great.
So I kind of imagine that's what it's going to be like for the further images that he wants to.
That'll be cool.
My
wants to
biggest
challenge me
fear
with.
is the actual like book cover. That's my biggest fear because I have like a blank mind on it. I have no idea what it's going to look like.
So you can't
I don't even
describe
know
to her what you think the ideal cover would
Well, I
be?
had an
because
ideal cover, and when because I can draw a little bit, but when I sketched it, it looked like atrocious, like some fourth grader spit on it or something. That was what it was, and I was like, I showed my mom, and I was like, "Do you like it?" And she was like, "Get that out of my face." Okay, then, all right. I'd rather let a professional handle it.
Before we skip something really important, I want to ask our guest, Jim Hines, about one of the new assignments he got last year that he had to keep secret for a while. He just wrote an accompaniment. So you think you get tongue twisted? That's a hard word. I'm not going to say that again. It's an official companion novel to the video game Fable, right?
Fable Legends.
Legends,
yes.
which will be coming out very soon. Tell us a little bit. How do you do that? I mean, this is like seeing things in your mind almost.
Kind of. Fable Legends, they don't have the exact release date yet. It will be out by the end of the year. You can go to the Fable Legends website. I'm not sure if they're still taking sign-ups for the beta trials. But yeah, it's the latest in the series of Fable games. And they approached me and said, "We want a novel to go with this. Something that will introduce these characters. You can tell your own story, but it's set in this world with these characters, and this is the kind of framework that we want you to use." And yeah, I looked at the material that they had given me up front, and it sounded like a lot of fun. It was also something I'd never done before. So, okay, sure, I'll do this. I wrote up a couple of ideas, like half a page. Hey, we could do this, we could do that. They picked one, we went back and forth on the outline. It was a much more collaborative process than I'm used to. I had many more stages of, okay, this is what I've got so far. Almost like the two of you were talking about. I've sketched this out, what do you think? Oh, I don't like it. Well, what about this? Well, the color's good here. We had some of that back and forth. It's like, well, I've written up this outline. Well, it's good, but you can't do that. Okay, so I'll change it and I'll do this. Okay, great. Can you give us some more villain point of view? Because one of the features of the game is you can play as either the heroes or as the villain. So they wanted the book to have point of view from heroes and from the villain. Well, I can try. What if I do it this way? It really was a lot of fun. And some of the restrictions and some of the information that they provided about who the characters are pushed me to write things I wouldn't have necessarily done on my own. So it was a different kind of creativity.
So the book comes out up to 6 months earlier than...
It comes out on August 4th.
Yeah.
Before the game comes out.
It looks that way at this point, yes.
See, it's like I'm used to the book-movie tie-in. That's the one that we always think of. But I never thought of game tie-in. I mean, I started writing this book, but mine is memoir and essay, and there's a genre developing, or at least a strategy developing called spherical storytelling, where you'll switch from one side of the story to another and they intertwine. And along the way I decided, I need to build a game to go with this. So I could see a game as a spin-off, and I'm now building Tomato Town to go with my Saving Civilization one tomato at a time. And I'm trying to figure out the whole gaming world, which is absolutely fascinating. So you had played the beta game. Did they give you the beta game to play?
I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement about details of the game.
Sure.
So I plead the fifth.
Ah.
They did give me enough. They gave me a lot of material.
Okay.
I will just leave it there. Enough to get a sense that this is a really fun world. And these are people who have a sense of humor. There are a lot of jokes. There's some goofiness to it. There's also a lot of focus on character and character development. And it was my kind of world.
Would you do it again?
Sure.
You liked it that well.
I would be. I mean, it would depend on contract details and all of that. But I would happily work with the Fable people again, and the publisher I worked with was great. I would have no problems going back and doing more work for
That's really clever.
I got a question for all of you. We'll start down there with David and come this way, and then we'll have to be quick because we've only got 3 minutes. What do you think? And we've talked about it a little about the future of graphic novels. And why do you think they work so well?
I think they work well for instance, for people like myself. Like, I can't visualize what my characters look like. To be able to have that kind of detail writing in there and to have the characters actually fleshed out on the page is something that's a little bit more magical in a sense. I love it. I have a couple different graphic novels that I've seen that I really want to get into. So in that sense that I don't know what my own characters look like, I would love to have that in a book like that. That would be amazing.
One of the areas I've been getting into graphic novels more is in continuation of television series and such that I've enjoyed. Avatar: The Last Airbender. They've done a number of, this is what happened after the show ended. Buffy, Firefly, probably a bunch more that I'm drawing a blank on now because I'm on the spot in front of a microphone. But I really enjoy being able to get more of those stories that way.
I just like the visuality of it, that as the story comes along, you can actually see the character and what they're doing, even if they're just simply drinking a cup of coffee while they're talking. But it's also like watching a movie that you can just kind of watch/read, but at your own pace. So you don't, if the lights go out, then you still have this graphic novel that you can just pick up and just keep on reading it. So it just stays with you.
My favorite has to be Harvey Pekar at American Splendor. I just think that was the gold standard of graphic novels for me, and what was odd about it was that he didn't stay with the same artist. So you had different versions, and his My Cancer Year looked different than the earlier books, and it was really an interesting take because it was saying that you didn't even have to look the same. The different artists would see you differently. So I thought that was probably the genre that I found so compelling. What was yours, Bill?
I have a lot of them that I love, but I'm just going to say the most recent one that told a very compelling story in an unusual way was John L. Lewis's The March.
Yeah.
I mean, who would have thought that they would have turned a civil rights moment into a graphic novel? And it was incredible.
Made it more accessible too, didn't it?
It made it incredible.
Yeah.
And it brought tears to people's eyes. So if you can do that in a graphic novel, you've done something.
Well, I want to thank our guests, David C. Thomas, Jim C. Hines, and Jynell C. Veverka. I guess we're going to have to put her. And Bill C. Castanier is going to help us. Make sure to tune in next week. This is LCC Radio WLNZ 89.7 here in Lansing, Michigan. You've been listening to the Lansing Online News Radio Show. Join us again next Monday at 7 o'clock. Thank you very much.